All right. So welcome to our Thursday meetup. How are you doing? How have you been so far? Tell me,
I've been
how have you
alright.
been?
I've been okay.
Okay, you've been okay. I love the sound of that. That's quite interesting. All right, so today,
Oh,
our discussion for
hmm,
today is empathy. Empathy.
okay.
Empathy, empathy. I believe this is not the first time you're hearing of the word empathy. Empathy, is
Mm-hmm.
it?
No,
This is not the first time, right?
no.
Fantastic, fantastic. So when you hear the word empathy, what comes to mind? What comes to mind when you hear the word empathy? What comes to mind when you
But
hear the
when I,
word empathy?
but when I hear the word, when I hear the word
Empathy.
empathy, what comes to my mind is feeling as in feeling I'm more like feeling something on behalf of other people, like having it like having a feeling someone is supposed to feel, like more like feeling that on behalf of that person, more like putting yourself in another person's position, to know if this thing were to be done to you, or if this was you in that position, how exactly are you gonna feel, or something like that. So it's more like this golden rule kind of a thing, more like do to others what you want it to be done to you. So empathy is more like, when you're trying to feel what people are feeling, right? Put yourself in other people's position, in their place, and actually imagine if this was to be you, what is it gonna be? Something like that.
Interesting. Interesting. That's a very wonderful explanation. I mean, some people usually say empathy means put yourself in other people's shoes. Like you say, try to imagine yourself inside other people's situation. That's exactly what empathy means. Trying to put yourself inside other people's shoes. So I'll define empathy, right? So empathy is the ability to understand and share the feeling of another person. Now, the two word there is understanding and what sharing of feelings. Now, it's a totally different thing to understand people's feeling, and it's another different thing to do what to share their feeling. I mean, I can understand how you feel, right? And I may not
Mm,
share your feelings. I may understand, okay, let's take for instance, I may understand that you angry, I may understand that you you're finding things difficult, or one or two things. But I mean, but in that same understanding, I may not be able to share your feelings, so empathy comes at the intersection of understanding and feeling. So for empathy to be complete, there must be an understanding of the current situation, the party that you want to empathize with, right? There must be an understanding of the situation where the individual find his or herself, right? And then an in an intentional will to do what? To share the feeling. So I'm going to go through the definition again. I say empathy is the ability to understand and share the feeling of another person. So that's what empathy what means. Now
mm,
this concept of empathy is actually a very component, is a very vital component of emotional intelligence and influencing how you interact with people. Yeah, so
yeah.
empathy as a concept, it actually influences how you interact with people, how you relate with people. It forms, relationship, navigates social complexities. Now, empathy goes beyond more sympathy. It goes more
Yeah.
beyond, most of the times people, sometimes when people get to, when people get to see others experience some situations that's, in quotes, not really palatable, right? They feel they have this sympathy for them. So most of the time they may have that sympathy, but they don't, like, how do I put it now? They don't like feel, they don't like put themselves in in the shoes of those other people. So what am I trying to say? Empathy is, it goes beyond mere sympathy, like having sympathy upon, people. It involves
Mm.
actively, um there must be an active involvement, right, of oneself into another person's shoes. That's the shoes of the person experiencing the problem or the emotion, and understanding the perspective from which whatever thing is coming from. So that's what empathy what means. Now I'll go through, I'll repeat the last thing that I said, right? I said empathy goes beyond sympathy. It goes beyond sympathy. It involves actively putting yourself in one another's shoes and experiencing the emotion and understanding their perspective. So that's exactly what
Mm.
empathy means. Do you have any contribution, or do you understand my explanations?
Yes, yes, I do. Definitely.
Fan- Fantastic, fantastic. Now, there are so many types of empathy. So we have what we call the cognitive empathy, you have what we call the emotional empathy, and have what we call the compassionate empathy. You have the compassionate empathy, you have the emotional empathy, and you have the cognitive empathy. So I'm going to explain these different types of empathy one after the other. Then we'll then discuss it and have an in-depth understanding of these individual components. Now, the first one,
Okay.
cognitive empathy. Now, what exactly is cognitive empathy? Just like the name suggests, cognitive. When you talk about cognitive, you're talking about something mental, right? Now, cognitive empathy, this involves, cognitive empathy simply involves understanding people's perspective or mental states. Like you understand people's perspective or their mental states. That's what cognitive empathy what means. Now, it's more than, like, it's more about knowing what others are thinking, right? Rather than feeling what they are feeling. Now, let me go through that again now. Now, when you're talking about cognitive empathy, right, it's more about knowing what others are thinking rather than feeling what they are feeling. Now, in cognitive empathy, it is more of people, right, getting to know what you are feeling, right, know what you are thinking, but not trying to feel exactly what you're feeling. So that's what cognitive empathy what means. Now, cognitive empathy is particularly useful in negotiation, right, or professional settings where understanding someone's viewpoint can lead to a better communication or decision making. For instance, when you're bargaining, right, you're making bargains, or you in professional settings, or you want to win a contract. Now, when you have this cognitive empathy, you really understand the way your opponent is thinking. Now, by understanding the way the opponent is thinking, it can lead you to projecting superior arguments. You end up winning whatever thing that, or whatever bargaining that you're trying to gain at that particular point in time. So that's what um, cognitive empathy means. Do you have
Okay.
any question with regards to that, or do you understand? Do you have any contribution?
Uh, okay. Like this is actually making me understand that empathy is actually beyond what I'm actually thinking it is. Like just about in a situation whereby maybe someone is not exactly in a good situation. So empathy is actually beyond whether the situation is good or bad.
about it.
Like with this, yeah, with this cognizance, cognitive impact now, right? I don't know. Is that
Yes,
that's it now, right?
yes,
It's
cognitive
beyond
empathy.
yeah, it's beyond somebody for someone being in a bad situation or something, because I always think the empathy is like always, when somebody is in a bad situation or when somebody is in a bad place or something. So it's actually like beyond, beyond that. So empathy actually, it goes beyond the state of sadness or state of badness or something. So it has to do with, life generally, right?
Yes. So that's
Okay,
it.
okay. No,
So it
that's it.
goes beyond,
Yeah.
it goes beyond situations, bad situations, or
Bad
it's an
situations,
encompassing
yes.
things. Yes, exactly. It's an
Okay.
encompassing concept. So that is it about cognitive what? Empathy. So the next type of empathy is emotional empathy.
Mm.
Emotional empathy.
Mm.
Now, this emotional empathy has a second name or has, another name, and that other name is called the affective empathy. It's called the affective what empathy. Now, this involves directly feeling the emotions of other persons, right? Now, when you see someone experiencing joy, sadness, pain, you emotionally resonate with them, right? This type of empathy is crucial in personal relationship as it fosters deep emotional connection. Now, this is more of the empathy that um I think this is more of what we all know empathy to be, like trying to resonate with people's pain, trying to resonate with people's joy, trying to, put yourself in people's shoes. When they are happy, you are happy for them. When they are sad, you're sad, trying to put yourself like the vision itself say, try to put yourself in other people's shoes. So this is more of the empathy that we all resonate with or we all, we've been used to. So I don't know whether you have any contribution with regards to this. Hello,
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Where went you?
I didn't know you were not hearing me. So this
All
is
right.
actually the one that, we are always like used to, when we say, put yourself in my shoes and all of that. So yeah, I think this is actually the one that I'm so, I was even referring to when I was actually making the first definition that I made. And this one also actually has a lot of things to do with the state of people's heart. How people actually, I mean, if someone can actually be empathetic for, put themselves in the position whereby they're trying to feel what someone else is actually feeling. That's actually a sign of that person being a kind person or showing the in-depth of that person's heart and all of that. Yes, so I'm understanding that, so can keep
Fantastic.
going.
Moving on. Moving on. Have the last type of empathy. You have the last type of empathy. Can you guess?
Um, Behavior.
I wanted to place a bounty, but you felt it already. So let's move on.
Wait, I can still try you.
I'm The next one is compassionate empathy. Look at this one. I want to,
You did.
I want to go and do exam
You
malpractice.
know, you
This
know,
is compassionate, and
you
I've
know,
said it too. Compassionate
I,
empathy.
I will not say that like not hear you. It's compassionate,
So
compassionate.
the next type of
The
empathy
next one is compassionate,
it's called a
compassionate,
compassionate empathy. Now,
empathy.
what
Yes,
exactly
I
is
knew. You
compassionate
don't say
empathy? Now,
compassion.
compassionate empathy is a combination of these two other empathies that we talked about, that we mentioned. Now, when we talked about cognitive empathy, we said cognitive empathy is just all about you putting having a mental like getting to resonate with how people think rather than their feeling, right? It's more of you understanding the way people think. So that's what cognitive empathy is. And we'll establish the fact that emotional empathy, right, has to do with, you know, feeling what others are feeling, trying to put yourself in their shoes. So now this compassionate empathy, it's a combination of the both, meaning understanding how people think and still putting yourself in those people's shoes. Now, this compassionate empathy is a kind of empathy that is drawn towards
Hello?
action.
Hey, I
Hello?
left the meeting. I don't know how I left the meeting.
Interesting. Okay, so like I was saying,
Yeah, the last thing I heard was when you were trying to define compassionate empathy.
okay, so I said the compassionate empathy, right? Hello? Hello? So I was explaining, I said compassionate empathy, that this is a kind of empathy that combines the emotional, the cognitive, and the emotional empathy. And we established the fact that the cognitive empathy has to do with you, um, like understanding what others are thinking, more like their mental states. And we said emotional
Okay.
empathy has to do with you feeling, trying to put yourself in other people's shoes, feeling their joy, their sadness, their happiness, you name it. So that is what emotional empathy what is. So we say compassionate empathy is now the combination of these two. Now, compassionate empathy is the kind of empathy that has an action drawn to it. Now, it's a totally different thing, right? Understanding or feeling what people feel. It's more like you went on a visit, right? Okay, it's more like you met a beggar out there, and I mean you so compassionate, you so emotional. You felt so much empathy, but it was just like nothing really happened at the end of the day, right? So it's not in that kind of situation, right, where you expressed that feeling, right? You felt like, I mean, you placed yourself in their shoes, but placing yourself in their shoes didn't drive any action from your end. Like there wasn't any action drawn by what you've seen from
Mhm.
their end. So that level of you feeling what others are feeling, right, without doing anything. Do you get that level of you
Mm.
feeling what others are feeling, but not doing anything is the emotional part. I mean, you are emotional, oh, like all this kind of thing. It's you have pity, you have but now all those your emotions didn't translate to any action. But now this other
Mm.
empathy that we are talking about here, that's the last type of empathy, which is the compassionate empathy. In this type of empathy, you feel what these people feel, you understand their mental state, and then as a result of the feeling and the understanding of their mental state, it drives your action. So that is where you see people will see they will see people that are begging on the street, and they will feel so much compassion about they feel very very compassionate, and it will lead them to trying to give out money. Or you see people living out, people that are very very they are going through difficult times, and you try to help them out. you know Now your compassion, your the empathy you felt around the whole situation drove an action, and that action made you to
Mm.
try to seek for avenues in order to alleviate them from that current situation they are. So that type of empathy that drives action, that type of empathy that makes you do something is called the compassionate what? Empathy. Do you
Okay.
get this?
Mm.
So we've discussed three type of empathy now: the cognitive empathy, the emotional empathy, and the compassionate empathy. So these are the three types of what empathy that we discussed. Now, Having talked about these three empathy, now how do we develop empathy? How do we develop empathy? Any suggestion? How do you think someone can develop empathy?
Okay. How do we develop empathy? I think, you more or less, if you love people or when you care about people, you always want to know what they are thinking or understand how they are feeling. Or, and when you have an understanding of that, you can actually want to do something about it. So I think by loving people, mm,
Yes, by loving people. Yes, that's very, very correct. By loving people. Okay, so I'm gonna point out some key ways of developing empathy. Now, one of the major or one of what part of the ways in which you can develop empathy is what we call active listening. Now, I mean, if you don't listen to people, you won't develop empathy. Like before you start putting yourself in people's shoe, before you start feeling for people, right? You actually need to understand the situation they find themselves in. I mean, because if you don't understand the situation people find themselves in, you may not be able to develop the empathy you get. Now,
mm,
how do you get to really understand what the depth of the situation this set of persons or the person that you are discussing with is? Right? How do you get to find out the depth of the situation? The only way to find the depth of the situation is by listening to them, actively listening to them. Now, when you actively listen to them, right, it makes you to understand the point from which they are coming. And this fully helps you to understand, this fully help you to, get a full grasp of their situation. And when you get a full grasp of their situation, it now forms, it now drives you to try to put yourself in their shoes. So you by so doing, you developing empathy. So what am I trying to say? The first way is to do what? Actively what? Listen to them. Now, another way um to get to develop empathy is to ask questions, right? Is to ask questions. Now, I mean, because if you don't ask questions, most of the time, you may not really understand the situation or the depth of situation people find themselves in. Or if you don't ask questions, you wouldn't understand how some persons are thinking. You wouldn't understand the thought patterns of
mm,
people. You will just be there, you will just be making mere assumptions, right? But when you ask open-ended question, real question, it will really make you to understand the depths of the situation people find themselves in. And in addition to that, you still understand how people think. So that will equally help you to develop what? Empathy. Now,
mm.
another thing too that can help you to develop empathy is when you reflect on personal experience. Now, let's say, for instance, let's say, for instance, I have a friend that was hitherto homeless, right? Now, that friend, when he sees other people that are homeless, the friend will be able to come to terms and say, I've been in these shoes before, I've been in this situation before. So it will make the
Oh,
person, it will make the person
to have a
to,
first hand. It's
he
called
said,
first hand.
it's got
First hand. It's
first-hand
called first hand
experience.
experience.
Fantastic.
You
It's
don't need
got
to be
first-hand
told how that
experience
person is feeling.
because
You don't need to be told how that person is feeling. You already know.
exactly, because you felt that same thing that person is feeling. So it makes it easy for you to really understand what they are feeling. There is this thing, it's more like when you see people out there seeking for job and they've not really gotten job for 2, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years. And
Mm,
you'll be like, you're not serious, you don't want to look for a job or blah 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 blah. You just go to them and
mm,
just talk this one, that one, that one, that one, because I mean maybe things are going down well for you. So you may not really understand the difficulties they experience while seeking for job because
mm,
you have it all rosy.
mm,
So you can't put yourself in
mm,
their shoes because you've not experienced that situation. But now, when you've experienced
Hmm.
that situation, when you stayed at home for like years, or you stayed at home for like, it will make you really understand when people are saying that they don't have job, or when people are saying they are homeless, or when people are saying that they can't feed. If you've been in
They
situations
don't have
like that,
money.
similar situations like that, it will really make it easy for you to develop what? Empathy.
That's true.
You get that, right? Now, another thing too is
Yeah.
practicing mindfulness. Being present and aware of your own emotions allows you to, to be attuned with other people's, to be attuned with other people, right? Being mindful, it helps you. Like mindful practice, such as meditation, deep breathing. When some people meditate, like they just stay on their own and start reflecting on things. You may not necessarily experience that situation, but there's a way you reflect on situations and you start seeing different, you start seeing different scenarios that could play out around people's situation. And by picturing different scenarios that could play out around people's situation, you then start developing the spirit of what? Empathy.
Hmm.
So these are, part of the ways individuals or people can develop what? Empathy. Do you have any question or any contribution?
Both sides, especially that experience part, because there are just some people you can't actually advise, no matter how sound you think your words are, or how wonderful you think you can actually talk. But then there are things that are best. I mean, with experiences, there are things that people that have experiences of it, I bet it's best they talk about it than you that haven't had the experience, and then you're just there, saying normal stuff like, yeah, do it this way, do it that way. But you have not really exactly been in that position before. So, but then sometimes you find out that some people that have been in a particular situation, instead of them to develop empathy, actually do not. They turn out to the opposite. I mean, when they see somebody in that situation now, they even want you to experience worse than they themselves actually experienced. So that's actually another weird stuff. And then you see somebody that have never actually been in that position, and then you really want to understand how this feels like, you know. So the whole thing plays out. I mean, I think it starts from a person. It starts from a person actually, it starts from an individual, it starts from the kind of heart somebody actually has. Because in some ways you're expecting somebody will be complaining about their boss, this one, big boss, this one. Then finally that person becomes a boss, and then you find out that
The person
they
then
want
do
every
worse.
other person to experience, yeah, everything they've ever experienced and even more. So you find out that I think the whole thing actually starts from the heart. It starts from the kind of heart, whether if you have the hearts of people,
Your
if you
audio is
actually
not
have
that.
the heart of
I
people,
think your audio is not really clear like that. You can continue.
Can you
Hello.
hear me?
Yes, I think it's okay now.
It's raining.
Oh,
Okay, so yeah, so I think the empathy can actually start from, from the kind of heart somebody actually has. So that said, I think I have a question. I really need to understand the difference between empathy and sympathy. Like, what exactly differs the both of them?
empathy and sympathy. Empathy and
Yeah.
sympathy. So I'll make this practical, right? I'll make this
Mm.
practical. You you're going on the way, right? You're going on the street, right? And you you see someone and the person is kind of telling you, I've not eaten since morning. Please, can you help me with 100 naira or XYZ amounts to take and eat or find something, to eat? Then you'd be like, this situation, chai. You just be so. You just be so emotional, like you'll be so sympathetic. Yeah. I'm trying to avoid using that word. Your mood will change. Like you'll be like okay, now the major thing there is that one, right, there's an action. One, there should be an action, right? One, there should be an action.
Yeah.
Now, when you've seen that guy on the street telling you that I've not eaten for morning, since morning, or since today I've not eaten. Now, by telling you that thing, right, the person is expecting you to do what? To render a helping hand, right?
Yeah.
So he's expecting his explanations to you to drive you to an action. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if you receive his explanation from the point of sympathy, the sympathy will just make him comfortable at that particular point in time. You may tell him, "Oh God, well, the Lord is your strength. Don't worry, God will provide." But then again,
Mm.
it's 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 not driving an action. There is no attempt to pull the person out of that current situation, right? Because now in that particular state, you're in that particular scenario, you're not putting yourself in that person's shoes. Now, empathy means that
Mm.
you're putting yourself in that person's shoe. But sympathy is that you're not putting yourself in that person's shoe. But you are really trying to understand that it's not easy for the person. But you're not trying to really understand the depths of difficulty that person is going through. So now when you
Okay.
put yourself in that person's shoe, it makes you understand the depths of the depth of what the person is in, and it then drives an action towards doing something. So that's
Okay.
it.
So if I actually understand that, so sympathy is more like um somebody approach like more like you just see what somebody is actually going through, and then that is it. We don't there's no place for you trying to see yourself in that situation. So empathy is more like you always trying to see yourself in that same situation that person is, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So let me buttress it very well too, right? So let me use some other this thing to really make it clear. Now we have two things. Actually, we have two things: understanding and feeling. We have understanding and
Understanding and
feeling, right? Understanding and feeling.
okay. Yeah.
Understanding and feeling. So now when you're talking about feeling, right? Feeling is where the empathy comes, right? Why understanding is more of
Hello.
hello,
Hello.
hello, I can hear you.
Okay.
So like I was saying, it's is in between understanding and what feeling. Now, sympathy involves recognizing and acknowledging another person's emotion or situation. You feel concerned, sorrow, or pity for what they are going through, but you do not necessarily you do not necessarily share or fully understand their emotion.
Yeah.
Now, empathy goes deeper, right? Empathy goes deeper than sympathy. Now, it involves not only recognizing another person's emotion, but also putting yourself in their shoes and experiencing these emotions yourself. Now, empathy is about
Um,
understanding and sharing feelings of other persons.
okay.
Now, let me talk about
Okay, I
the
think I
response
get
and
it.
action now. Now, when you talk in situations of sympathy, right? Now, the response in sympathy is often offers comfort or consolation, typically through words or support, such as "I am sorry," Do you get it?
Mm,
Or God will provide. It is well.
mm.
All these things, that is sympathy. But empathy, now with empathy, the response is more about understanding and potentially taking action based on what you've had or based on what you've understood from the person's explanations of the current situation. Do you get it now?
Yeah.
So one, there is an action in one. Why do that one? There is no action.
Okay.
So this is the difference between empathy and what? Sympathy.
Sympathy.
Yes. Do you understand that?
Okay, I think I get that. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I do get that.
Fantastic. So, what are the challenges? What are the challenges in, challenges of empathy? Is there any challenges? Is there any challenge? Do you think there could be a challenge?
Uh, okay. Yeah, if people, I just feel well, I think one of the notable challenges is that when people know that you're that kind of a person, they will kind of start perceiving it as a weakness and want to exploit you more, like they want to take advantage of it more like that. So people can easily come up and just cook up stories or say whatever thing they want to say and just make you start feeling that way and all of that. And then another thing is that some people don't really know how to handle the whole empathy thing, right? They just go and carry someone else's burden and then that person is sleeping while they themselves are at home thinking about the whole thing and they are not sleeping. So that's actually another thing I feel like is a challenge when you are, you're not creating a good balance on the whole thing, when you're taking it too personal. Because sometimes that person you're even feeling for might just be living their life normal. Or
I'm
maybe they're
enjoying
sleeping at
themselves.
night. So not exactly like they're enjoying themselves, but they're just managing their situation and just,
Being happy
moving
altogether.
on with life. But then you yourself, you just go and sit
Giburi
down there
Anishi.
and just yeah, so I think these two actually the one that I'm actually remembering right now.
Very, very well. Very, very well. When you try to hijack the situation, most of the time people try to hijack the situation. They usually say crying more than they believed, or being more bereaved than they believed. So this could be a challenge, right? Now, another thing too could be misinterpretation, right? Sometimes there's usually an assumption of fully understanding people's feeling without confirming it. Do you get? Now, most of the time,
Mm.
people may just say, no, I've not eaten, no, like things are very, very difficult for me. Now, the person that is telling you that things are very, very difficult for him, the person may be riding one car, like person may be still be driving
Mm.
car, right? Maybe the difficulty that he's saying that things are difficult for him is that he no longer goes to party on a Friday night and and go and squander money. Maybe that may be the
And
difficulty
that
that the
that's
person
moving.
is it?
And go and that's moving.
And go and move. And go and dance have been moving, moving. So this could still be another challenge. The problem of understanding, truly understanding the depths of the situation people find themselves, it could be another challenge of what? Empathy. So that is the that is the conclusion of our topic today on empathy. I don't know whether I have any other thing to chip in or you have any question before I do a conclusion.
Okay, I think this is actually a good topic because I think for people to actually, I mean, for relationships and for any kind of relationship at all to actually thrive, it's actually good for you to pay attention to how the other person or other people actually feeling and how, before you actually do something, right? Before you do something that you know it's going to affect your partner, or that is going to be at the detriment of someone else, you try to, put yourself in that person's shoe and see exactly how that person is going to feel. Because some things are just that just some things are just an action to you, right? It's just something that
Mhm.
you just do once, then but for someone else, it's gonna take them years to even get over it and all of that. So it's always best, I think, before you actually do something, especially when you know that this actually is going to affect someone else, you always try to put yourself in that position, right? I mean, some people are just greedy, or I don't know the word to even use, they are just cruel. They don't even care whether somebody's dying or whatever. They just want to do what they want to do. And so, or maybe they will just say after all, they will just apologize and all of that. And so people should also understand that um apology also does not actually always, change things for people like that. So yeah, so before you actually do something, you always, like, actually think through it. And also when you see that somebody is struggling, you kind of should be paying attention to people around you to find out when they're actually struggling. They don't even need to say something, but from the way they are acting, from the way they are doing stuff, that okay, something is not right, and all of that. Yeah, so that's just what I wanted to ship in.
That's very, 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 very wonderful contribution. I think there's something that we missed out, right? We didn't even talk about the importance of empathy. Like we discussed a whole lot of things about empathy, but we did not discuss about the importance of empathy. So what do you think could be the importance of empathy? Of course, I mean
Mm,
empathy must have an importance, isn't it? So what do you think could be the importance of empathy?
okay, I think just as the what is it called? Just as the definition of it just goes, it actually helps you to understand how people actually feeling, right? It actually helps you to have an understanding of how an action or something that actually happened to people actually makes them to be. I mean, sometimes people can actually change, right? And you find out that it's because of what happened to them. Maybe they lost someone, or something drastic just happened to them, and then find out that this person that used to be like this is no longer like that. So if you actually think about it and put yourself in that person's situation, you actually have an understanding of why this person is not acting this way they're acting, and then it will also help you to know how to follow them through. I think that's just what I have to say.
Fantastic. Most of the times, it takes to change people, or what it takes to drive home your point is for you to really understand for you to really understand how the other party, how they feel about whatever situation they find themselves in, right? Because when you have that understanding, it fine tunes the way you communicate, right? Based on that situation. So, empathy is a very, very important concept. Like it helps to foster relationships, right? When two people, right, be it at workplace or whatever kind of relationship is, when when people know that you are kind of person that you're empathetic, you try to really understand the situations of people, it makes relationship between you and those people very, 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 very cool and the way it should be. So it helps in building trust as well. Because if you're empathetic and I'm empathetic, it makes it very easy for me to trust you. Because I mean, at every point in time, you really try to understand my feelings. You try to understand my thought pattern. You try to understand from where I am coming from in diverse situations. So it's it helps to build trust. So these are few importance of what empathy. I think in this contemporary society, if everybody was to have empathy, then the world itself will really go a very long way to be a better place. Even in workplace, if there is empathy in workplace, and I mean, whatever thing that you're doing, when you try to put yourself in people's shoes, it reduces friction. Like when you put yourself in people's shoes, it reduces friction, it reduces potential quarrel that could arise as a result of misunderstanding. So these are few importance of what empathy. All right. So conclusion. Before I conclude, anything?
No, 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 no. I think you've said it all.
All right. So in conclusion, empathy is a very powerful tool that enhances human communication, improves communication. Empathy is a very powerful tool that enhances human connection, and improve communication and foster strong relationships. Now, whether in personal interaction, leadership, professional settings, empathy plays a critical role in creating a more understanding and compassionate world. Now, developing empathy requires active effort, mindfulness, and a commitment to understanding other people's experience and emotion. Now, by cultivating empathy, individuals can contribute to a more harmonious and effective relationship, both personally and professionally. So it's at this note that we will conclude. So I'll go through my conclusion again. So I said empathy is a very powerful tool that enhances human connection, improves communication, and fosters strong relationships. Now, whether in personal interaction, leadership or professional settings, right? Empathy plays a critical role in creating a more understanding and compassionate world. Developing empathy requires active effort, mindfulness, and commitment to understanding others' experience and emotion. By cultivating empathy, individuals can contribute to more harmonious and effective relationship, both personally and professionally. So thank you very much. This is an admonishment to you and to everybody out there listening to this podcast, listening to this video, from wherever you
And to
are,
you.
from wherever you are joining. Try today to develop empathy. I mean, the world needs empathy, right? Your friend needs empathy, your brother needs empathy. When we all have empathy, when we try to put ourselves in other people's shoes, it reduces friction. It makes us communicate better because they are communicating from the point of understanding rather than the point of trying to drive home a point or you know show superiority. So as we continue to develop empathy in our day-to-day activities, may God continue to bless us and empower us. Thank you very much.
Amen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you
So,
so much.
yes, thank you. Thank you so much for showing up. Thank you so much for availing yourself to be here. Thank you very much for the wonderful contributions. I mean, your contributions were all awesome. Thank you very much for that. Let's do this again, same
Thank you
time, same
so much.
station next week. Till then, till we meet again, keep being amazing. Keep being amazing. Thank you and bye for now.
Thank you so much. Have a good night first.